original Mummy film was made in 1932. An ancient mummy named Imhotep in Egypt is killed for trying to resurrect his deceased lover. There are British men in a British museum in Egypt who are on discovery digs for the English Museum in Egypt. They make a discovery of an ancient mummy's tomb as well as a scroll. The year is 1921. As one of the men are alone in the room, his curiosity gets the better of him and he opens the scroll. Unbeknownst to him, the mummy comes back to life. His eyes open. He gets the scroll and he walks out, which leads this man to totally go mad. He starts laughing and he just can't control himself. The other man runs in to see what's happening. He says, "Oh, he decided to go for a walk." The man never recovered from his madness. Fast forward 11 years. It is now 1932. The two men are discussing the death of one of their fathers, the older man's father that never recovered and died in a straitjacket after seeing what he saw. They don't know it yet, but Imhotep disguises himself as a modern-day man. Imhotep renames himself Ardith Bey and knocks at the door of the two British gentlemen, saying that he has a find that they can use in their museum. They say, "Well, why don't you go dig up the tomb?" He said, "Us Egyptians are not allowed to dig up tombs from our own country." So they hire a group of men to go dig up the tomb. They don't know it, but it's his princess that he wants to have dug up. As soon as they dig out the tomb, he disappears. Mr. Bey discovers a beautiful woman named Helen, who has a very Egyptian look about her because she is half Egyptian. He falls in love with her, thinking to himself, she has a remarkable resemblance to his princess. He's falling in love with her, but so is the young man, Frank, who is living with the other men. Mr. Bey sneaks into the British Museum, where he stays each night. He kills the caretaker at the museum by pointing his ring at him, which kind of sends a flame or fire that kills the caretaker. He also eventually kills young Frank's father, and he's discovered to actually be the mummy. They had a suspicion, and now they know not to trust him. But he also casts a spell on the British men's butler to go and work for him instead. On one of Mr. Bey's visits to the English gentleman's home, this is before it's discovered he is really the mummy, he meets Helen and is absolutely charmed by her as she is by him and wants to see him again. Later on, when Mr. Bey is back at the museum, he does a magic spell that actually makes Helen go to him on a couple of occasions, and then she'll faint or something and forget where she is, forget what happened. Of course, Frank, who loves her by now, and the other men that he lives with go and rescue her each time, and she gets scared at this point and says, "Please keep me under guard and don't let me go back if the spell comes on again. Please." They get nurses and stuff to hold on to her so she can't leave. But when the spell reaches her, she begs them to let her go. Frank and the other men agree to let her go there, but they secretly have a plan to follow her to the museum. All is going to plan until Mr. Bay sneaks into their house and points his ring at Frank, causing him to pass out. A lot of time passes until the other gentlemen discover him passed out, and he's just waking up, and they realize, oh my God, we better hurry up and get to the museum. While the British gentlemen are rushing to the museum, you see Mr. Bay in the museum with Helen, with her dressed as a princess, and he actually tells the story of what happened years earlier. Thousands, actually 3,000 or 4,000 years earlier. He actually goes over the story, and they actually show a flashback scene of him being caught and them wrapping him up. This is a pretty gruesome scene for a 1930s movie. They show him being wrapped up and suffocated. They wrap him up. He's still alive. They're wrapping him up. See, he was buried alive. Frank and the other gentlemen arrive at the museum, but they were powerless to do anything to help her. He's going to kill her so he can resurrect her, and his servant is going to kill her. And she's begging for her life. She realizes, no, I don't want to do this. I'm still young. I have some life to live. Even though he says, well, look what I sacrificed for you. And she's scared to death. And then for some reason, she remembers about Isis, the goddess of life, or the princess of life, who is a protector. There happens to be a statue of Isis right there. And she begs and prays to the statue to help her. The statue's arm lifts up as though it's coming to life, points at Mr. Bay, at which he ages thousands of years, and he crumbles. You see him actually crumbling, the rocks, the pieces all falling down. And he's eventually just a pile of dirt on the ground. Helen is fainted at this point on the ground. Frank runs over to kind of wake her up and, bring her back to the present. And she does wake up, and they kiss. So I guess you can say they lived happily ever after when they got rid of the big bad mummy. Many of these so-called black and white movies, although they were originally made black and white, were colorized later on, but they still retained the eerie feeling in the movies. The Mummy went on to have a lot of sequels, and I'll be honest with you, I think the ones that were made in the 90s and 2000s were, that's me, I'm an old lady, right? In the next couple days, I was going to do these all together, it's just too long of an explanation. So tomorrow, the next day, look forward to a different movie. Stay tuned. Thank you. Love you.